Gentleman is recognized.
Mr. Speaker, we all recognize that we have two separate but equally urgent issues facing our country: raising the debt ceiling and reducing the nation's debt. In this Congress, we should make a serious effort to do both. However, after 100 years almost of protecting the full faith and credit of the United States by raising the debt ceiling without pause, the majority has decided to hold the debt ceiling hostage in order to push drastic cuts and place the burden of future debt reduction squarely upon the middle class. This unprecedented effort to put ideology before country has led us to the brink of default, a prospect that is all too real as we vote today. The plan we're considering today is not the product of bipartisan compromise. No matter how many times anybody says that, it does not make it true. We're considering a bill that the majority knows will never be approved by the Senate nor signed by the President. Members of the House are being told to vote on legislation despite having no idea what cuts are in this bill. Any Democrat who votes for this bill could be cutting Social Security or heating for low-income families and not even know it. To ask the House to vote on undisclosed cuts is a cynical waste of time. Furthermore, the bill shrugs aside the burden of governing. It asks us to vote like a mock government that will be set up and pass the buck to a commission to make decisions for us, leaving us to simply rubber stamp what they decide. That is not why I ran or was elected to Congress, and it is an abandonment of the responsibilities we are sworn to uphold. Today's reckless plan would put us right back in the same situation a few months from now, when the atmosphere is even more politically charged by the coming election. Our economy and our markets won't have the stability they need. Credit agencies will have no choice but to downgrade the U.S. debt. This would cause interest rates to rise, effectively raising taxes for every American family. The leaders of the majority know this and said so publicly, but they don't seem to care. In a June 13 interview with Politico, Majority Leader Cantor said, "We feel very strongly that one of the reasons why we continue to see an ailing economy is people have very little confidence, have very little certainty in terms of where we are headed." In that same interview, he was explicit that he wants a single debt ceiling vote for this Congress and not, as he said, a series of short-term extensions, and some has suggested. The following week, Politico quoted Leader Cantor as saying, "If we can't make the tough decisions now, why would we be making them later? Votes on a debt ceiling increase can help get us where we want to go," end quote. Yet here we are today, considering a bill that will require a second debt ceiling vote just 6 months from now. Not only is this bill awful policy and a waste of our time, but the rule before us clears the way, which will come as a great surprise to Americans, for a constitutional amendment that would be a simple majority, give a simple majority the ability to cut spending, while only allowing the government to raise revenues, that is to go after the people who are more able to pay, and to get corporations to pay their own way. You have to have approval of 3/5 of the House to do that. In other words, they are sacrosanct, the poor always give. This cut first, think later approach would directly harm the middle class. The amendment stacks the deck in favor of future cuts to Social Security, Medicare, and Medicaid, while making it virtually impossible to close tax loopholes for oil companies and millionaires in their private jets. As if this was not enough, the process by which we will vote on this amendment is a disgrace to this institution. Under today's rule, the majority proposes we consider a constitutional amendment under suspension of the rules, the most closed procedure that we have. As we all should know, suspension of the rules is designed for non-controversial legislation such as naming a post office or congratulating a winning sports team. To give a constitutional amendment same consideration as renaming a post office is embarrassing for us and a disgrace to the dignity and tradition of the House. In closing, today's debate is about fairness. Are we a nation that asks the most of those who have the least? It certainly appears so. Or are we a nation of shared sacrifice and fairness, a nation that asks every American to do his fair share? Today's bill turns upside down any notion of fairness and proposes radical changes to our Constitution that would protect millionaires and special interests while making it easier than ever to take from the middle class. For this reason, I strongly urge my colleagues to vote no on today's rule, the underlying legislation, and I reserve the balance of my time.
Gentlewoman reserves. Gentleman from California.